Hi, comic book fans. Today it's the price variance, and we're not talking about comics. This is our first non-comic show in 2 years. We have decided because quite a lot. I have noticed quite a lot of comic geeks enjoy horror movies. Okay, so Alan and I have put together a list. Separately, we put together a list of our top 10 horror movies. Okay. Now we compared our lists before the show. We recorded these two shows because I was convinced we were going to have a whole load the same. We didn't. We only had one movie the same, and we talked about that movie and four of our other favourite horror movies over on Alan's channel. So when this is over, go over to Alan's channel and watch the first five recommendations from each of us. So on my channel, both of us have got another five horror movies, five different ones each. We didn't cross over to share with you as part of our top 10 horror movies. Also, guys, I am sure we have missed your favorite horror movie off this list. So if you're sitting there going, why haven't they mentioned whatever it is? Put it in the comments below so that we can see and go, oh no, we missed that one. Okay. Right. Okay. So Alan, you're the guest. You can start with your first horror movie.
So my first horror movie will be Hellraiser.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I love. Actually, there was a bunch in that series that I loved. You know, that was kind of the classic horror movie thing where you have like multiple movies. But I just love the whole idea of the puzzle box.
Yeah.
My brother was really into Rubik's cubes and all these kind of things, and I just love that idea of when you solve the box, you open up a gateway to hell. I just love that whole concept. And I love the characters like Pinhead and I don't even know what the other characters' names are. Like just Pinhead's the big one.
Pinhead's the big one, and it was Clive Barker, wasn't it? The
Clive Barker, yes, yes. And it's just I thought it was a great movie. I it was scary and it's like just absolute gore.
I have to probably go back and rewatch this because I don't think I've watched Hellraiser since it first came out.
It is really quite great. So one of the things is you can bring people back from hell by sacrificing like other people. There's like so many cool things in it. And it's just such a crazy film. It's just awesome. Just a great movie. I really love it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll need to go and rewatch that. I did watch it when it first came out. It hasn't hit my list. I like films that for some reason I felt no particular desire to go and rewatch it. So I quite like ones I can go and rewatch. Right. My first one for this recording is one of my favorite horror films, and it is John Carpenter's The Thing. Now this is set in a sort of Antarctic research station, and some strange alien parasite has landed, and it can mimic human beings. It's a brilliant concept. So they all get paranoid about, is this person really that person, or are they the alien? Now apparently this was film had a $15 million budget, and John Carpenter spent $1.5 million on the special effects for the monster, which I think was well spent, to be honest.
Yeah.
However, this was a box office flop when it came out. It only took 16 million in its in its debut, which, since it costs 15 million to make, it was a bit of a flop. But it really sort of began to get a cult following when it came out on sort of video. You were describing
it was a VHS success.
It was a VHS success. So when it was the people who went along on to Blockbuster on a Friday, picked up their 2 or 3 films to watch, take them home and watch them with their mates, as you were describing previously. That's when it took off. and since
Yeah.
then sort of got critical acclaim, and it won't just be on my list of people of I would not be alone. If we got 100 people to do their top 10 horror films, I'm sure half of them would have
Would have it.
on it.
It was almost on my list. It is one of those movies that's really great. I like the fact that it's a movie where you don't know who is the bad guy.
No.
And that's what's kind of cool about it. Really great movie. I actually just watched it recently again with my family. They didn't like it as much. My kids, I think the younger generation, they just don't have the patience. They didn't have, like, it's very slow build,
Yeah,
right?
it's quite a slow build. Yeah.
And it's I don't know, they just didn't get into it. So that's why it didn't make my list, because like my family didn't like it as much as I did. I love that movie,
and it's got some similarities. We were just talking about The Shining on Alan's channel, and how they were all blocked in and they couldn't escape because of the snow. This is similar.
Yeah, similar idea.
Arctic research station, and the weather's really bad, so they can't really escape. So yeah, it's similar type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Locked room horror.
Yeah, very much. That's great movie though. Great movie. Okay, so the next one on my list is A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Mm-hmm.
So I watched this as a kid. It was kind of like the movie that everybody would talk about. They come to school and did you watch Nightmare on Elm Street? And like there was like a billion different parts of it, and they would always, every time it would come, like the new version would come out, they would talk about it. But the original was quite brilliant. It has like Johnny Depp in it. It has like a bunch of pretty big name actors in it, who are really just getting their starting roles. It was like I actually watched how movies are made, kind of documentary on it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a scene where I think it's Johnny Depp's murder, like where so what happens is you sleep, and if you fall asleep, then you meet Freddy Krueger, and he's basically, he's killing the kids who were the children of the people that killed him.
Yeah.
So he's getting revenge on the second generation.
Yeah.
And so Johnny Depp, he falls asleep, and there's a scene where Freddy Krueger's hand basically goes right through him, and just goes right through his chest, and blood's everywhere, and the room spins upside down. Okay. Now they actually took a room and spun it upside down to do that scene. Okay. So it's just that level of coolness, and I guess because it was spinning around, everybody got vertigo, and they were like getting sick, and it was just like so messed up. So, and it was just like, so those kind of like, they had no budget to work with either. So, they had to do these really practical effects. And the guy that did all the special effects on it is just like this guy that's like a genius at doing practical effects for the cheap.
Yeah.
And it was just really, really well done. And actually, the scissor hands, the knife hands kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, I guess every time the actor wore them, it would slice up his own hands in the process. Because it was just like, it was so real. It was actually like a real, like
real.
So he would get like all like sliced up, and he started playing with them and stuff. It was just really kind of a cool thing. So I'd actually recommend you watch that movie and how it was made. It's such a brilliant movie.
Yeah, so, I enjoyed Nightmare on Elm Street, but I'm going to do my pick next to go with it, because I think they fall into a similar sort of category of ones that have grown a franchise.
Yeah, it is definitely a franchise one. Like Nightmare on Elm Street.
My one is the original Halloween movie. With Jamie Lee Curtis. We talked about how movies need to have great soundtracks. Well, the soundtrack.
Yeah, I was just thinking that when you said it.
It's just, brilliant. And you probably can hear the Halloween sort of, the sort of tones of that Halloween music as I'm talking about this. So, yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis, really good. I like Jamie Lee Curtis as a great actress. And also Donald Pleasance, great British actor, sort of doing his sort of stoic British stuff. It's not a long movie. It's only about 1 hour 20, 1 hour 25, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah. So Mike Myers, I think, is it Mike Myers? Yeah.
Yeah, Mike Myers, and it's actually what's his name? William Shatner mask. The mask that they use,
Yeah.
it's a William Shatner. It's like Kirk. It's a Kirk mask. They just spray. I think they just spray painted it white or something like that. But so it's funny. It's like yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the original Halloween, believe it or not, from 1978.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that old. But
Yeah.
yeah, great movie. I always associate with the 80s, but yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I can remember. And again, it's just about, I was 19, so I was, hit the 18, and I could go and watch some of these films in the cinema. And I can remember going to watch Halloween with Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Pleasance. And you've got to remember, back then we hadn't got this history of sort of slasher movies, and
Yeah.
which
Well,
now,
it was one of the first big slasher movies, I would say.
yeah, yeah,
That Friday the 13th and
yeah,
Nightmare on Elm Street would be
yeah,
the three.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So there we go. It's two similar ones there: Nightmare on Elm Street and Halloween. And Alan, what's your next one?
My next one is Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Okay, yeah,
You mentioned The Thing, which is
yeah,
kind of similar. Like in the weird way, that's why I didn't put it on the list. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, again, you don't know who you can trust and who you can't trust. And it's sort of like one of those slow builds, like where you got these pod people, it's like plants that oh, it's just like this pretty little flower, and then they're curious about it, and it's one of those flowers that grows you. It sucks out your life and makes another copy of you, and then you become like one of these pod people. And I like the 70s version. There's actually an earlier version to it, but I like the 70s version with Donald Sutherland. And it
oh yeah,
actually had Leonard Nimoy in it, and Margot Kidding, Margot
yeah,
Kidder.
bit of kid.
Yeah, Kidder. Just a great movie, and it's got that slow build. It's like and you, and by the end, it's like it's too late. Everything is it's just the whole world's gone, and the final scene. This is what really made the movie for me. Is she's like the one girl you're sort of watching is like so happy that she survived, and then she sees a friend, and she's like, oh good, somebody else is still alive, and then you see the friend turn and go, oh. It's just like kind of, it's just really cool. It's just you think that they made it, and then they get killed.
Yeah, no, I do like that film, and it
That's
it
good.
does it actually, the old version and that version are both good. The black and white version, the original black and
Yeah,
white.
yeah, I've watched both. Actually, there's even a modern version which is quite good too. It's a great movie. Just stands up.
Right, what have I got next? Oh, okay. So we're talking about slasher movies. In a way, you could claim my next choice is the first slasher movie.
Okay.
It's Psycho, Alfred
Yeah.
Hitchcock. Psycho. This was a bit of a departure actually for Hitchcock, because he just made North by Northwest.
Hmm.
Cary Grant, great film, great thriller film, and he does this low budget, black and white, because the color was around at the time. He did North by Northwest in color, but so he does this low budget,
Black and white.
black and
Yeah.
white, sort of little horror film. Um,
Hmm.
and people went, "Wait, what are you doing, mate?" Anyway, it's now seen as one of the classics. Anthony Hopkins, not yeah, Anthony
Anthony
Perkins,
Perkins.
Anthony Perkins, Anthony Perkins, of course, is the proprietor of the Bates Hotel,
Mm.
and the girl we see at the start runs off with money from her employer and is on the
Yeah,
uh,
on the run.
and unfortunately decides to stop the night.
You picks the wrong hotel to stay in.
A bad decision, bad decision.
Yeah.
And we get that classic shower scene with the curtains coming down,
Yeah.
the knife, and the music again. The music.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. That this is one of those. No, it's like the famous music. Yeah, I'm
um,
terrible at mimicking music sounds. Just so you know.
yeah, no, me too. That's why I'm not doing it. But people will be hearing it in their head as we describe this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
There's actually a funny thing. This is it was a that's actually a nude scene,
is
and
it?
they were like, yeah, and they made a big like it was a big deal because Hitchcock didn't want it. Well, they were telling him you can't do a nude scene, you can't have it nude because because it's going to be released, and it's you got to kind of look carefully, but it is a nude scene, and he snuck it in there. So just so you know.
Yeah, so I love Psycho. I rewatched Psycho recently and I enjoyed it a second time round. It's quite an old film,
Mhm.
but in a way, it
What's
was.
that, mother? What's that, mother? Oh yes, yes, yeah. That's true.
Actually, now you mention it, Anthony Perkins. You could be a double for Anthony Perkins.
Oh,
Anyway,
thanks. Thank you. That's not a compliment. Okay, thank you. Um, so yeah, so I guess my last one now. Is this my last one?
um, I've got no. I think you've got two
No,
more.
I got two more. Two more. One more. Okay.
Yeah,
So
two more. Two more. Yeah.
yeah, two more. So two more. So my next one, another black and white film that they could have done in color, and I don't know why they did it in black and white, but I think there was a sort of time at the late '60s
Yeah.
where they thought it was like in terms of like movies they thought that had to be black and white to be considered an art form, and this movie was kind of an art. I have to give it that. It's Night of the Living Dead,
Yeah.
and it is a movie that really like set up a whole bunch of zombie movies. It is the kind of the movie of the first major zombie movie that kind of set up the whole genre. Ramiro at his best, kind of thing. And it's just such a great movie. It's like, it's like it's less about zombies than it is about human dynamics, people's dynamics, how they deal with a crisis. And it's sort of that whole breakdown of society and what would you do if society is breaking down around you? And it is a really cool scene and cool kind of psychological thing where you can kind of see how people interrelate and how they act. And the thing that I really enjoyed about it was there was this main guy, and you think, wow, he's kind of like this guy. He's going to survive. He's got it down, and he dies in such a lame way. And it's actually the cool. That was actually what made it cool in a way, because he's survived all the zombies, and it's at the end where all these kind of like hillbilly guys come, and they're just cleaning out all the zombies. They're just killing them all and then piling up the bodies. And he's like, "Hey, I survived," and they're like, "Oh, another zombie." It's like it's just so crazy. It's so shocking because you think, oh, he's finally getting
Yeah.
rescued,
Yeah.
and then he gets killed, and it's like, wow, just a great ending. Sorry, spoiler alert. But you had a few years to see it,
You've
so
had a few years to watch it. Yeah, I agree. And it's another one that bears rewatching. So
I've watched it many times actually.
a well-made movie.
My daughter, when she was like 6 or 8 years old, really young, she loved that movie. She watched it over and over again.
Yeah, I'm not sure that you should be allowed to raise children if you're showing them Night of the Living Dead when they're 6.
She really liked it. It was funny. It was great
All
movie.
right. Okay. Right, my next one. This is one I don't think you'd heard of, Alan. It's a Swedish film from 2008 called Let the Right One In. They did an American remake of it, I think, called Let Me In.
Mhm.
But it's this is the original Swedish one, and it's a really strange and eerie story about a 12-year-old boy who's pretty lonely. He's getting bullied at school. Home life
Mhm.
isn't good, and he befriends this 12-year-old girl. But the
Okay.
12-year-old girl is not a 12-year-old girl. She is a
Vampire.
vampire. Yeah.
Oh, they did one with Chloe Moritz, I think
Yeah,
is her name.
the American one, the American version.
Yeah, I've seen that one. That one was really good.
Yeah,
I
no,
really
the
liked
American version one is good. The Swedish one is better. Okay.
it. Okay.
So yeah, the American version one was okay. But this one is
Mhm.
really interesting. It's sort of like about, human dynamics and
Mhm.
this threat from this creature that looks like a little girl, but is not a little girl.
Yeah, yeah.
And she deals quite harshly with his bullies.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, no, I know. If that's a lot of the time where they do a remake of the original, and the original is way better. The American version is a little bit like Disneyfied, or I don't know what. It's just not as quite as like
I haven't got quite. I mean, it's okay. The
edge.
American one's pretty good, but
Yeah, the American one's good. I just
it wouldn't have hit my list of top 10, whereas this one did. I wanted to get a couple of moderns in there in
mhm.
this because all my previous picks have all been not modern. So my next pick of my two moderns, and I really do recommend you go and watch the original Swedish version. Let the Right One In. There we go.
I'll definitely do that. That's a great choice. I mean, I know the American one, so it's probably going to be
Yeah.
great. So, okay. So my last one, and I really struggled with this. So I almost want to quickly mention a bunch of movies that before.
You're gonna do. We're gonna do that at the end, Alan. You're not allowed to. You've got to do
Okay, I'm not going to do it now. Okay, I'll do that
our
then. There's
10.
a bunch of movies,
Yeah.
bunch of movies that I want to recommend. But this was a struggle for me, honestly. Coming up with 10 was such a struggle. But the next one on my list is In the Mouth of Madness.
Yeah.
And the premise for In the Mouth of Madness is it's about a writer, and basically he writes a book that when people read it, they go insane. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so the publisher has hired, and the writer is like, he's supposed to come out with a new book, and the publisher is waiting for this book. They're like, hey, this next book, when is it going to come out? Okay. And there's a real demand for it because people are kind of a little bit crazy after reading the other books. And so they hire an investigator to go find the author. And they have like a little bit of the book, and when you read it, it kind of changes your perception of reality. And the detective guy, he's not really into horror books. He doesn't really take them seriously. He thinks it's kind of just trash. And he starts to investigate, and he starts to experience the book. And it's a very good psychological thing where you see that kind of breakdown of the character.
Okay.
Where
This sounds good. I quite like that as type.
and yeah, Sam Neill is the detective guy,
Okay.
and it's just there's actually a scene in it which is kind of funny, extra funny for me. So there's a scene in it where there's this big church. Okay, it's a black church. Well, it's like black. I mean, like the color. People misunderstand me. So yeah, it's this big church in the middle of nowhere. There's actually in my hometown, there's a very similar church. It actually looks like the same church. It's so funny. I'm like, this is so weird. And the church is actually the church of hell, like it's
Yeah.
like a fallen church. So it's just kind of funny. So every time I see that church, I think of that movie. So yeah, it's a really great movie though.
In the Mouth of Madness. Okay, my last one, modern film, 2008, I think it was. I just
Mhm.
love this film. It's called A Cabin in the Woods,
Great
and
movie.
just it starts off one movie, and then it becomes
Mhm.
another movie
Yeah,
halfway through.
And then it goes way further
It
than
goes
that.
way. So it starts out as a traditional sort of, there's a group of kids and they're going to
Mhm.
the cabin in the woods and they're getting killed off one by one type of thing. But
Yeah,
then you discover that this is not what's happening. So, well, it is what's happening, but
it is what's happening, but it
there's
isn't.
something behind that. Uh,
Yeah,
and then there's something behind that. Uh,
yeah.
yeah.
This is
So yeah, I think it was great. I really did like it. And I thought some of the special effects and some of the monsters we saw were fantastic. Uh,
yeah.
so if you haven't seen A Cabin in the Woods, for me, it is a modern classic horror with a twist. Which
And another,
you don't get original twists very often these days because most
yeah.
have been done. Um, so yeah,
And A Cabin in the Woods is interesting because it does play homage to a lot of the other
it does.
classic
Yeah.
horror movies, and it does it in such a brilliant way that I kind of like it. Yeah, it's a great movie. So yeah,
Okay, so
that,
those are our top 10. We can't change them, but we do have a few that are honorable mentions. Okay.
these are some really great movies that I also recommend people check out. I
Well,
really felt like our list should have been top 20. That would have been easier.
Alan, give me your honorable mentions, but don't need to talk about them. Just name them.
Yeah, so Aliens with an S,
Yeah,
King Kong, the original,
yeah,
um, The Lost Boys,
yeah. Good film.
1408,
Yeah,
Dead Alive, which was done by Peter Jackson. Great movie. You're going to watch it after
I
this.
haven't seen that.
Omega Man.
Okay. Yeah, I think I.
That's kind of like what's the one with uh what's the one where it's like Will Smith?
Where he's alone in the city.
Yeah, yeah, that one.
Can't remember what it's called. But I enjoyed the Will Smith one. Yeah.
The Will Smith. This is the original.
Okay.
It's called Omega Man. Then Howling Five, which if you like, Howling Five is the Howling series is basically werewolves. Well, Howling Five is kind of like The Thing. You
Okay.
don't know who the werewolf is, and people are getting picked off. Great movie. The Thing was actually next on my list. Day of the Triffids.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah. Now I had that on my original list. I think I've told you this story before. I actually
Mhm.
watched it in the live stream last time. So when I was a kid, I was babysitting for my baby sister. So it was me,
Mhm.
must have been 12, 13, 14, something like that. We had a black and white television, so you can tell how old we're talking about. And I had all the lights off, and I was sat there, black and white television, Day of the Triffids.
Mhm.
The Triffids, if you see the film, they're plants that have sort of been
Yeah, big plants eat people.
sort of alive, and they can flick out this tendril that comes out. They
Yeah.
can walk, and they flick out this tendril. They went like that and hits you, and then they can take your brain. So
Mhm.
I'm sitting there watching this, about 13, 14 years old. I'm, baby sister's upstairs in bed, parents are out, I'm alone in, and I'm watching this, and I'm watching these triffids going like this, and suddenly this thing hits my face like this, a wet sort of probing thing like this, and it was my dog licking me, and I jumped about 10 feet in the air, and I have to say, that is the for me, that was not the horror movie worst moment.
Yeah, like totally get freaked out by it. Yeah. So that's awesome. Yeah. That movie actually leads to the next one because it's almost the same thing. 28 Days.
Yeah.
28 Days is actually kind of a rip off of Day of the Triffids. And next level of that would be The Walking Dead is the next, is a rip off of the rip off of the rip off. But and then the next one on my list is The Ring.
Yeah.
And actually, I watched the Japanese original version. It's terrible. The American version in this case is actually better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
I've got a few honorable mentions. Seven. I really enjoyed Seven.
so Seven. See, I wouldn't have counted that because I consider that psychological thriller.
Okay.
So
All right. Deliverance. I really like Deliverance.
again, I would have considered that
Yeah.
a different genre.
Inheritance is a modern one that I really enjoyed.
A lot of people like that movie. I didn't like that. I thought that was dumb. Sorry.
Yeah, Night of the Living Dead, which Alan had on his list, I had on my honourable mentions list. And the other one I potentially would have put on is Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead is awesome, but I wouldn't consider that horror. I
No,
know it is. I would consider comedy actually.
yeah, but it's one of the reasons I didn't put it on the list. So, but anyway,
Yeah,
I had it on me in my list.
I
So
love that movie. I love that movie. By the way,
yeah,
it's
I
good.
love that movie too. Um, there you go, comic book fans. We've not talked about comics. So we're probably going to have 4 views and no comments. But anyway, if you enjoyed our list of horror movies, enjoyed us talking about them, leave a comment below on the movie that we've missed off our list that you think should have been there, or even if you thought any of the honourable mentions should have been on the list. Let us know. Anyway, we'll see you again next week. That's your lot.
But